Good evening, everybody. Tonight's mini lesson is on what is a unit rate and what are some common ones. So please write this on your next 3-page. After you have done so, close up your notebook, unpause, and be ready to concentrate with me on a couple of examples. So let me just remind you before we get to unit rates, a quick recap on like ratio tables. A lot of times we've been doing problems with, say, like a ratio of boys to girls in a class has been a common one for us, I think. And so let's just say there were 3 boys for every 2 girls. Lots of times we've been making tables of that and kind of saying, okay, well, if the ratio of boys to girls stays the same at 3 to 2, I could have 3 boys and 2 girls. Or I could kind of double that, times 2, and have 6 boys and 4 girls. Keep doing that, 9 boys, 6 girls. And don't have to necessarily go one at a time. I could also make a big jump and say, oh, if I want to skip like 10 up that chart, times 10. I could have 30 boys for every, times 10, 20 girls, and such like that. And so we've been filling out our tables kind of like this to show different combinations of the ratio that we could have as we did more and more groups of that. And I'm going to use that strategy a bit today, so I just wanted to remind you of that real fast. So a unit rate, no big deal. A unit rate is a ratio in which one of the quantities is 1. 1 unit means 1, like a single one. So a unit rate is a ratio in which one of the quantities is 1. So like I went back to my boy-girl one. A while ago, I think I did like some one about science professors in college, and I said there was a ratio of 4 men to 1 woman. That is a unit rate, or a unit ratio, because I have one of the values is 1. For every 1 female, sorry about that, there is 4 males. So anytime I have a ratio with a 1 in it, I have a unit rate. So we calculate those pretty often, and I want to introduce you to a couple common scenarios that involve unit rates. One's driving. So let's look at this example here. It takes me 12 hours to make the 720-mile drive to Cleveland, Ohio, where my family lives. True story. When I make that drive, what is my speed in miles per hour? So miles per hour is, you've probably heard of when you're driving, like it's a measurement of speed. Lots of times when you see the word per, that's a good sign that you're talking about a unit rate. Because what I'm looking for here is how many miles in 1 hour. That's what makes it a unit rate. How many miles do I drive each hour, per hour? That's how your speed is measured. If you're going 60 miles an hour, that means you drive 60 miles in 1 hour. If you're driving 35 miles an hour, that means you drive 35 miles in 1 hour. So a speed is a very common unit rate because we're looking for how many miles per 1 hour unit rate. So I don't know that. I can think about my table here and say, okay, I've got miles and I've got hours. And the only value I'm given is that I do 720 miles in 12 hours. So what I really want to know is, if I were to kind of continue this table, how many miles do I do in 1 hour? Because that's my unit rate right there when I have a 1. So what's going to happen, I'm going to divide my hours by 12, divided by 12, and so that is no problem, so long as I also just divide my miles by 12, divided by 12. So I will do that. 12 divided by 12 is 1, and 720 divided by 12 is 60. So when I make that trip, I'm driving 60 miles each hour, 60 miles per hour. If I started my chart with that, 60 miles hours in 1 hour, that means I also drive 120 miles in 2 hours, 180 miles in 3 hours, 240 miles in 4 hours, or times 12, 720 miles in times 12 hours. So it's just sort of like I'm going down my chart instead of up, which we didn't do as much. But that is my unit rate, 60 miles per hour in 1 hour. So miles per hour is a very common unit rate. Another one is price per item, per whatever. I'm going to go back. We've done this example in lots of mini lessons. 20 pencils cost $2. So the price per pencil, that is saying how many dollars for every one pencil. There's my unit rate. One pencil. All right. And so if I want to find my cost per pencil, well, no problem. I'm going to start kind of in my middle of the chart. I got pencils, and I've got not hours. That was the last one. Pencils, and I've got dollars. And I kind of think about being in the middle. I know 20 pencils cost $2. And I want to know how much for one pencil. So I could go back, like I know going backwards, it would be 10 pencils for $1. This, by the way, this isn't the unit rate I'm asked about, but it is, notice, a unit rate because I've got 10 pencils per dollar. 10 per dollar. So this is a unit rate, but it's not the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for the one with one pencil. So I'm looking for the other unit rate in this situation, though this is also the unit rate. So if I divide that by 10, divide that by 10, $1 divided by 10 is 10 cents. So the cost there is 10 cents per pencil. Unit rate. That's a magic unit rate word. 10 cents for every one pencil unit. One. That's a unit rate. Open up your notebook. We'll do a couple together. Those are both common ones. Usually money and speed are the biggest, the most common ones. So let's do these together. All right. So in a bad traffic jam, it once took me 2.5 hours to drive 30 miles across Atlanta. Also a true story. What was my speed in miles per hour on this trip? Oh, before we do that, what's the unit rate? I want to make sure you write this in your notes too. The unit rate is a ratio where one of the quantities is equal to 1. That's a unit rate, equal to 1. All right, so let's imagine this situation. So I've got miles, and I've got hours, and I know that it took me on this trip to go 30 miles, took me 2.5 hours. So I'm looking for miles per hour, how many miles in 1 hour. So I know I'm looking for this figure back here. Instead of 2.5 hours, I want 1 hour. So to get to 1 hour, I would divide by 2.5. So that means to get the number of miles, to keep the ratio the same, I also have to divide by 2.5. 30 divided by 2.5 is 12. So I drove 12 miles in 1 hour. That's 12 miles in 1 hour, which is 24 miles in 2 hours, which would have been 36 miles in 3 hours to keep the ratio the same. And in that middle part, I had 30 and 2.5. So I drove 12 miles per hour. 12 miles each hour was my unit. Whoop, I raced too far. 12 miles was my unit rate. we go. 12 miles per hour. That's it. Let's do a money one as well, because that's the other kind of most common unit rate. Jonathan got paid $25 to babysit 4 hours. How much did he get paid per unit rate? Per hour. So I know that he got dollars, hours. I know he got $25 for 4 hours. So my question is, how much did he get paid for each hour, for 1 hour? So if I'm going to divide my hours by 4, I also need to divide my money by 4. And 25 divided by 4 is going to be, what, a little more than $6.25 per hour. So he got $6.25 per hour. It's just the same as any other ratio problem. I'm just looking for the instance where this is 1. So that's a unit rate. Once you feel like you have a good handle on them and you have written your notes down, you are all set, unless you need to go back and see it again. And I will see you tomorrow.